Hi everybody, my name is Hildebrandt. I am currently working at Phase 2 as a senior systems architect. I realize I'm wearing my Phase 2 shirt. I didn't even think about this when I got dressed this morning. It was just the first thing on top of the pile. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, so I want to kick this off just by kind of talking about some of my issues when I'm working to develop software. And I tend to work on really complex systems, things that have lots of moving parts, lots of pieces. And anytime I am working in a system like that, I want to make sure that I can replicate production systems as closely as possible within a development environment, because that helps to validate that everything you're doing in your local development environment is going to work and is going to match up with what the system is going to be in production. Now, it's not always possible. You can't always do everything, but the closer you can get, the better. Now, what that leads to, or what that tends to lead to, is really complex and in-depth local development environments. Now, I tend to get really frustrated when things are more complex than I think they should be. I love Microsoft's development tools, but I think that Visual Studio's Docker tools suck. I hate them. I don't ever want to use them. In addition, I used to work a lot in Angular apps. The templates that create Angular apps within Visual Studio suck. Please don't use them. It's much better to just use NPM to create an Angular app and manage that app outside of Visual Studio. Now, what that leads to is a tendency. What I used to do is I would have 5 console tabs open. One of them was running my Docker containers. One of them was running my Angular app. Another one was looking at logs coming in from all of these different systems. And it just became a hassle to try to manage all of that, to try to start everything up. If you need to tear one thing down, you have to shut everything down, start everything back up. And so I started looking for opportunities to do this better. Now, there are tools that you can use like Docker Compose, which will start up multiple independent Docker containers at once, but you can't manage anything outside of Docker with Docker Compose. And so I finally came across this product called Nuke. Nuke is a build automation system for, they present it as for .NET, but really it is for anything. And as long as you can build a .NET project, you can use Nuke. So I'm going to go through here and start showing some code, and we're going to do a live demo, which I know tends to be a problem in live talks, but hopefully everything is going to go off without a hitch. So if you see my my VS Code up here in the corner, when you start a Nuke project, it creates a build directory. And within that build directory are just a couple of C# files. And the most important one is this build.cs. Build.cs defines all of the steps of a build process. And so I'm going to spread this out a little bit so it's a little easier to read. Excuse me. So within a build file for Nuke, you have these targets that define everything that you're going to do as part of a build process. So you're going to see things that you would normally see. You're going to see clean, restore, compile, things like that, that are just going to do everything that you would normally expect. Now, once I get past my standard build steps, I define a couple of things that extend the capabilities of Nuke to be able to manage my development environment. So I actually have a configuration file set up. So I'm using user secrets within my build, which reference the same user secrets in my project file. So I can bring my config directly into my Nuke build. I'm going to tear down, at the beginning of my process, I'm going to tear down all of my containers, and then I'm going to restart my containers. So here you can see when I'm starting my development containers, this actually depends on the init config step. It depends on the clean development containers step. And then I actually bring in this database config so that when I run this Docker image, I'm just running a Postgres image, I configure that Docker image right here within my build system. I use Liquibase for managing database migrations. So every time I start up my development environment, I start with a clean Postgres image. Liquibase runs all of the migrations. I'm able to put test data into CSV files, and all of that is brought into the development environment automatically with this migrate database step. Now, one of the things that's really nice about Nuke is that all of this is based on the strong names within this file, right? So when I'm saying that this step depends on another step, I'm not having to put in a string or some other thing that you could run into issues with naming conflicts, or change the name in one spot and forget to change a string somewhere else. When you build this build project, it's going to automatically check to see if your names are correct. Now, after the migrate database, we're going to see a couple of places where I'm starting projects that are then going to run in the background. So this is, for this example project, I have a really simple 3-tier application set up. Like I said, I have Postgres as the database. I have the C# project, which is my API layer, and then I'm using React as a front end. So when I start my API layer, I'm going to run this inside of a task, and I'm going to run .NET watch run. Now, .NET watch run is going to run the project, and then it's going to watch for any file changes. So this is something where running as a command line is actually beneficial, or has a benefit over running directly from Visual Studio. When you run directly from Visual Studio, you have to stop the project to make any changes. The kind of live updates don't work great. So here I'm just running on the command line, running .NET. Like I said, I have a React project as the front end. Here where I'm starting the app, I'm running npm start within my front end application directory. Then the other thing I'm going to run in the background is I'm going to pull the logs out of any of the Docker containers that I'm running. At this point, I only have Postgres running in Docker. So this is just going to start up a task that's pulling in all of those logs and piping them out into my terminal. And then finally, I'm going to start my development environment. And again, this is going to depend on all the steps that I just mentioned. I'm going to set a flag that says that I'm running, and then I'm going to watch for a Control-C on the terminal, which will tear down my environment and stop everything. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and come down here to my terminal. Let me zoom in a little bit. And I'm just going to run the PS1 script. Nuke preloads your environment with the necessary scripts. It has scripts to run on command, PowerShell, and it has an SH script if you are running in a Linux environment. And you'll start to see some things fly by, which is just Nuke running through all of these steps. You'll see Liquibase goes through. It actually fails on the first attempt because it can't connect to the database yet. It reruns. The second attempt, you see it go through, and now you can see my logs from my C# app are coming in. I have informational logging turned on in Entity Framework. So it's going to pipe all of the queries that are running in the API layer directly into my logs. And then it also started up the React app. So you see here over in my browser, my really simple, please don't judge me on my horrible design recipe box. And I just have just real simple interaction here. It also automatically opened a tab which shows the API and the one API endpoint that I have running, which brings in the recipes that I have in my database. So if I refresh here, you'll see some more logs come out that, again, that same SQL query was run to get this. And essentially everything that I'm running, I can watch the logs and all of the logs go into the same place. So there's only one tab that I have open in my terminal, only one place where I'm looking, and only one thing that I'm running that starts up the entire development environment. So then as your development environment grows, as you bring in more Docker containers, more external services, more places that need to interact, you can build them into a single file that manages that entire development environment. And essentially within Nuke, as long as it is available on a command line, you can run it. So like I was saying, I use Liquibase. Well, for a lot of things, Nuke has built-in tools. They don't have built-in tools for Liquibase, but what I'm able to do is define within my build file that there is a tool called Liquibase and that it's executable on the path. And then you have this Liquibase becomes a callable method that you can then just pass command line arguments to and run exactly how you would expect to run. Another benefit of Nuke is that, at its core, it is meant as a build management system. So everything that I'm doing here can then be transitioned over to whatever continuous integration tool you're using. So if you don't want to go through the steps of configuring GitHub Actions to do the things that you're trying to do, you write them into your build.cs file so that you can build containers if you have custom containers. You can publish your containers to whatever repo you have. You can build all of your artifacts and push them out to NuGet, NPM, wherever they need to go, all from within the same file. All right, so that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a question from Flesh, if I can bring it back up and find it.
Fletch?
Yes, he's asking.
He doesn't get to ask questions.
Uh-oh. Well, someone on Twitch asked this question. The question is, just curious which cloud you currently work in and use Nuke in. Is it on-prem, Google, Azure, AWS, other?
So I have not. I do know that they have AWS tools for Nuke. I have not tried the AWS tools. Most of my work right now I'm doing in Azure. I also haven't tried using Azure tools. I'm not sure if they have Azure tools, but again, Azure has a command line client. So as long as the command line client is available, Nuke can use it.